Now we start in the Middle East this hour, where the United Nations Human Rights Chief has called on Israel to immediately stop its ground assault on Gaza City, warning of mounting evidence of war crimes, crimes against humanity and potentially more. High Commissioner Volker Turk stressed the impact on women, children and people with disabilities, saying the only response to this is stop the carnage. Let's listen in to what the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, has to say on the issue.
It's absolutely clear that this carnage must stop, and it has to stop at once. I can only think of what it means for women, for malnourished children, for people with disabilities if they are again attacked in this way. And I have to say the only response to this is stop the carnage. It's also important. The whole world screams for peace. Palestinians, Israelis scream for peace. Everyone wants an end to this. And what we see is a further escalation, which is totally and utterly unacceptable. And it is important for the people of Gaza. They cannot sustain yet another intensification of violence and destruction and killings and lack of humanitarian assistance that needs.
Meanwhile, the European Commission will adopt new sanctions against Israel on Wednesday over its Gaza war, targeting trade provisions on EU-Israel agreements. Spokesperson Paula Pino confirmed the measures following earlier proposals by Ursula von der Leyen. Let's listen in to her statements.
En réunion du collège, les commissaires adopteront un paquet de mesures concernant Israël, notamment une proposition de la Commission visant à suspendre certaines dispositions commerciales de l'accord euro-méditerranéen entre l'Union européenne et Israël.
We're now joined by Ariel Whitman, who is the op-ed editor and senior reporter at Globe's newspaper. He joins us live from Tel Aviv in Israel. Thank you very much for joining us, Ariel, here on the programme. We first of all heard there from the United Nations Human Rights Chief warning of war crimes and crimes against humanity, which could soon be found against the state of Israel. How are the people of Israel viewing these consistent statements coming out of Israel, coming out of the United Nations, coming out of other humanitarian bodies, and of course coming out of allies and states alike? What are your thoughts, Ariel?
I think that if you're asking how the general Israeli public looks at this, is that way before October 7th, we've had the UN has not been seen as a, let's say, a fair observer of what's happening here. And on October 7th itself, as we all know, we had numerous UN employees participate in the attack. I have a friend whose son's body was taken by a UN worker with a UN uniform on him. And so the fact that we have to listen to lectures by people at the UN is, to me, unbelievable. Also, if you look at the actual contents of this report, which I did leading up in the past few minutes, just reading about what they were actually saying and what were the actual facts that they were looking at, meaning what were the numbers that they had coming from. And entirely they come from the Gaza Ministry of Health, meaning Hamas. Entirely, the entire report does not even mention the fact that a lot of these places where the war and the battles are happening are in civilian areas because Hamas uses them as launching pads and as places where they are warring with Israeli soldiers. They did not mention the hostages once in the entire report. They did not mention the amount of food that has gone in objectively by all sources in the past few months. The entire report seems to look at the war from the Hamas standpoint, literally take out the other side of the warring. There's two sides to every war, so only one side pretty much is mentioned in the entire report. And then we are supposed to look at it and say, as an Israeli public, this is something that we should be shocked that our government is doing. I am not a supporter of the government here. Most Israelis, according to the polls at this point, aren't. But what we do support is that Israel is just and right in this war, and that reports like these are ridiculous. There are a lot of problems in Gaza. The problems are not because there's a genocidal intent or that there is, starvation happening purposefully by Israel. The problems are very, very complicated and complex, and they need to be solved. And just for example, you mentioned Volker, whatever his name is, from the UN, and he said, we just need the conflict to stop. We all want the conflict to stop. Not one Israeli wants the conflict to continue. I have friends right now. I was a combat soldier when I was in the army, and my reservist friends are in Gaza right now, going into Gaza City. No one wants them to be there. No one wants more soldiers to die and lose limbs. It's ridiculous.
Ariel, if you don't mind me interrupting, if you, no matter the information that Israel puts out, that the fact of the matter is that the world does see these reports, which of course leads Israel to seemingly more and more isolate itself, given its responses to them. What do you think the long-term effects? Let's say Israel fulfills its objectives here, destroys Hamas, releases all the hostages. Do you see Israel coming back to the international community in the same way that it was prior?
Very difficult to say what will happen. It all depends on how much longer this goes on. In my opinion, this is the amount of time that this has gone on is indefensible for the Israeli public and what they think of their government. And so people should know that the Israeli government is facing extreme pressure from within because people are very, very angry at the amount of time this war has been taking. And Prime Minister Netanyahu said yesterday that Israel has to be ready for sanctions and that the economy will be hurt very badly. And so he said we need to, close our belts and, we won't have enough money to be an open economy because we won't have trading partners here. So it's a big problem. And people are looking at, just on the economic side, Israelis' quality of life will be going down probably in the next few years if this continues. But on the other hand, if we finish this war fast and we get to a deal with the Saudis and some of the other countries that before the war were looking to do deals with Israel, theoretically that could be a great opportunity. But we have to get this as fast as possible finished. We have to finish Hamas, because stopping the war right now, which would be great for the next few months maybe, but leaving Hamas in place would be a disaster for Israel on the world stage. It would teach Israel's enemies that it's worth it to start a war with Israel as long as you hide behind civilians and take Israelis as hostages. And so that would be even bigger disaster than being isolated on the world stage. So I think we have to take both sides into account and say Israel has to finish the war fast. It has to be a quick, fast, swift, and strong move. And on the other hand, it has to be, finished. Okay. It cannot be a half-hearted approach.
Ariel, do stay with us. We have further updates from the region. Qatar and the United States are